amidst the howling blizzard that tore across the ice-crusted plains of Navarra. Commander Elias Kane gripped the frostbitten handle of his plasma rifle with trembling fingers. "Steady, steady," he muttered under his breath, teeth clenched so tightly they threatened to shatter. The colossal Frost-Born Leviathan loomed before him, a towering beast of jagged ice and scales that shimmered like frozen stars, its breath a swirling tempest of freezing mist that threatened to freeze everything in its path. Elias' eyes darted across the white expanse, searching for any sign of his second-in-command, Lieutenant Maravas. But all he saw was the swirling storm and the eerie glow of the Leviathan's icy maw. His lips parted, voice strained, "Mara status, respond," but only the howl of the wind answered him. The radio crackled weakly, then went silent. Pain bit into his fingertips, the relentless cold gnawing at his flesh. His breath came in ragged gasps, each exhale a plume of vapor that quickly vanished into the storm. Yet within that frozen hellscape, a spark flickered deep inside him, a stubborn ember of defiance against the overwhelming despair that had paralyzed his forces just days ago. He shuddered, not from cold alone, but from the memory that clawed at his mind like a ghost. The moment when his entire battalion had stood frozen in place, their hearts numbed by fear and hopelessness. As the first wave of the Frost-Born Leviathans descended. That moment when hope seemed to shatter like thin ice beneath their boots. Elias' jaw tightened. No, he swallowed hard, forcing the memory back into the recesses of his mind. Not again. His voice lowered to a growl. "They called me the Thawed of frozen wills for a reason. I won't let their sacrifice be in vain." The wind whipped harder, tearing at his tattered battle cloak. But he squared his shoulders and raised his rifle. The Leviathan's breath frosted the air mere feet from his face, chilling him to the bone. Yet he held his ground. Behind him, muffled through the storm, came a faint voice crackling over the comms. "Commander Kane, I'm still here." It was Mara. Her voice was steady but strained, carrying the weight of exhaustion and unyielding loyalty. "Where are you?" Elias barked, scanning the blizzard. "North Ridge, barely clinging to the rock face, the frost seeping through my armor." "I'm holding." She paused, then added quietly, "but I won't last long without backup." Elias' mind raced. The Leviathan was blocking the only path back to the rest of their frozen remnants, the shattered remains of what was once a proud army. His comrades lay immobilized by the creeping terror, their minds trapped in icy paralysis. He could almost hear their silent screams beneath the frozen earth. He clenched his fists. "Hold on, Mara, I'm coming." His movements were slow, deliberate. Every step across the slick ice was a battle against numbness and exhaustion. Yet Elias pressed forward, driven by the memory of those lost and the burden of being humanity's last hope on this merciless world. The storm surged, blurring his vision. The Leviathan's eyes, glowing like pale sapphires, tracked his every move. It let out a deafening roar, a sound that seemed to freeze the very air, and lunged. Elias dropped to one knee, firing a rapid salvo of plasma bolts. The weapon's heat was a small comfort against the biting cold. Each shot a brief flare of life in the desolation. The bolt struck the Leviathan's icy hide, shattering shards of frozen armor, but the beast barely flinched. He gritted his teeth. "You're not the first monster I've faced," he muttered fiercely. "And you won't be the last." A sudden surge of adrenaline flooded his veins. Memories flashed, of Mara's unwavering gaze in the heat of battle, of his soldiers rallying under his command, their frozen wills melting away under his words and courage. He recalled the countless nights spent strategizing, the sacrifices made, and the unspoken bond that tied him to the remnants of his army. "Listen to me, Kane," he whispered fiercely, voice cutting through the howling wind. "This isn't just a fight for survival, it's for their honor, for their memory, for every soul lost in the ice. The Leviathan's breath approached again, a swirling frost storm that threatened to encase him in solid ice. Ilias tightened his grip, muscles trembling. He could feel the cold biting deeper, his fingers numbing, his vision blurring at the edges, but he refused to fall. "Remember who you are," came a steady voice behind him. Myra emerged from the swirling snow, her armor battered but her eyes fierce. "The Thawed of frozen wills, let me help you finish this." Ilias turned, a faint smile breaking through the frostbitten pain. Together, then, they moved as one, a synchronized dance of survival against the monstrous force before them. Mara provided covering fire while Ilias advanced, each step reclaiming ground frozen in fear. The Leviathan roared again, lashing its massive tail, sending shards of ice flying like deadly projectiles. Ilias dodged, heart-pounding, breath ragged. "We end this now," he declared, raising his rifle to fire a concentrated blast at the beast's exposed flank. The shot hit true, and for a moment the Leviathan faltered. But the battle was far from over. Ilias knew that beyond this fight lay a greater war, the war for humanity's survival on this frozen world, and the war within himself to keep hope alive. As the storm raged on, Ilias Kane stood resolute, a lone figure against the icy tempest, a beacon of defiance and courage in a world that threatened to freeze his very soul. The frostbite bit deep, the cold relentless, but the spark within him blazed brighter than ever. This was not just a fight for survival. It was a fight to thaw the frozen wills of those who had lost their way, to reignite the fire of humanity's indomitable spirit on Nevarra's unforgiving plains. And Commander Ilias Kane would be their last, best hope. The alarm blared through the command center, a harsh, serrated wail that cut through the stale, recycled air like a razor. "Commander Kane, report," barked General Harlan, his voice laced with a tension that betrayed his usual stoic demeanor. Ilias Kane's fingers trembled as he gripped the console, eyes scanning the holographic battlefield. "The Leviathan has surfaced from the depths," he said, voice low but resolute. "Its frost is spreading faster than anticipated. Battalion Delta is frozen solid within minutes." General Harlan's jaw clenched. "Your strategy is reckless, Kane. No human force can withstand that kind of cold. We're losing men by the thousands." Ilias' jaw tightened. He felt the sting of those words, not because they were untrue, but because they came from those who had never endured the crucible he had. Years of cryogenic warfare training had forged him into something different, a man tempered in ice and fire, yet misunderstood by those who preferred safer, conventional tactics. He thought back to his early days in the academy, where instructors dismissed him as too empathetic, too soft for the brutal realities of war. "You lead with your heart, Kane," they said, "and that will be your downfall." Yet it was that very heart, that deep well of empathy, that had earned him the moniker Thawed of Frozen Wills. He had the uncanny ability to ignite courage in the most desolate of souls. Now, as the frost crept across the battlefield like a living nightmare, freezing friend and foe alike, that gift was being put to the ultimate test. "General," Ilias said, voice steadying, "I'm not asking for blind faith. I'm telling you that the only way to win this fight is to rekindle the spirit of every soldier still breathing. We can't just wait for the frost to claim us." The general's gaze was cold, but a flicker of doubt crossed his eyes. "And how do you propose to do that when your own men are caught in frozen paralysis? Your second in command, Lieutenant Mara Voss, has been out of contact for hours." Ilias swallowed the lump rising in his throat. Mara was more than a subordinate. She was the embodiment of resilience. He remembered training alongside her in the cryo-warfare program, how she had endured the harshest conditioning without losing her spark. Then I'll find her, he said, voice hardening, no matter the cost. The holographic display shifted, showing a creeping blue frost spreading like ink in water. Reports filtered in, entire regiments immobilized, battalions lost to the icy grip of the Leviathan's breath. Elias could almost hear the silent screams of his comrades trapped beneath the frost, their minds frozen, hearts numbed. "Commander," a voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Lieutenant Voss crackling through the comms. "Elias, I'm still holding on, but the frost is seeping through my armor. I don't know how much longer I can resist." The words hit him like a physical blow. "Where are you?" "North Ridge," she replied, voice strained but unwavering. "The path back is blocked by the Leviathan. I'm surrounded." Elias' mind raced. He knew the terrain well, treacherous cliffs, slick ice, and now the looming alien behemoth between them. Every instinct screamed at him to retreat, to preserve what little was left. But that was not who he was. "Hold fast, Mara, I'm coming." He rose from the console, muscles aching from fatigue and cold. Memories flooded his mind. Harsh drills under simulated cryogenic storms, nights spent poring over strategy manuals. The weight of every fallen soldier pressing down on his conscience. He had been underestimated his entire career, dismissed as too idealistic, too empathetic to command real battles. Now those doubts echoed in the voices around him. "Elias, you can't do this alone," urged Captain Riker, his closest confidant. "The Council is pulling support. They want you off the front lines." Elias met Riker's gaze, unwavering. "If I don't go, who will? Someone has to lead the thaw. Someone has to show them that the frost can be broken." With a grim nod, Riker handed him a thermal suit, its surface crackling with energy designed to stave off the cold. "Then don't let us down." The journey to the North Ridge was a nightmare. The wind howled like a living thing, tearing at his suit and numbing exposed skin. Each step was a battle against ice and exhaustion, the cold biting deeper with every breath. Yet beneath the physical torment, a fire burned in Elias' chest, a determination to revive the frozen hearts of his people. As he climbed higher, the battlefield stretched below, a frozen graveyard of shattered weapons and unmoving figures encased in ice. The Leviathan's massive form loomed, its translucent scales shimmering with an eerie light. Its breath a swirling tempest of frost that seemed to sap the very will of those who faced it. Suddenly a crack echoed, a sharp, brittle sound. Elias paused, heart pounding. Ahead a squad of soldiers stood frozen, their expressions locked in terror. He knelt beside one, feeling the chill radiate from the ice encasing his body. "Wake up," Elias whispered fiercely, placing a gloved hand on the soldier's chest. "Remember who you are, fight the freeze." For a moment, nothing. Then a flicker, a twitch of an eyelid, a shudder. The soldier's eyes snapped open, wide with confusion. "Commander," the soldier gasped, voice trembling. Elias smiled grimly. This was the thaw, the spark he had come to ignite. But the moment was shattered by a deafening roar. The Leviathan turned, eyes blazing with icy fury. It lashed its tail, sending a spray of razor-sharp ice shards hurtling towards Elias. He dove to the side, the shards missing by inches, embedding in the frozen ground. His breath came in ragged gasps, vision blurred by the storm swirling around him. "Elias, you're exposed," Mara's voice crackled in his ear. "Fall back." "No," he growled. "I'm not leaving my men behind." He fired his plasma rifle, each shot a burst of warmth in the frigid air. The Leviathan staggered, but only slightly. "Your fire won't melt this ice," came a cold voice through the comms, General Harlan again. "Pull back, Kane. You're risking everything on a losing battle." Elias clenched his fists, rage and sorrow mingling in his chest. "I won't let them die frozen, not while I breathe." Suddenly, Mara emerged from the swirling snow, her armor battered but her eyes fierce with unyielding spirit. "Together," she said, extending a hand. Elias grasped it, a silent pact between them. They moved forward, a storm of determination against the frozen behemoth. Mara provided covering fire, her shots precise and deadly, while Elias advanced, each step reclaiming lost ground. The Leviathan roared, lashing out with icy fury, but the two soldiers pressed on, their resolve thawing the battlefield's frozen grip, one heart at a time. As they fought, Elias' thoughts swirled, memories of harsh training, the sting of underestimation, the faces of those lost to the frost, but above all, the unshakable belief that even in the coldest darkness, a single ember could ignite a blaze. "Remember who you are," Mara shouted over the storm. "The Thawed of frozen wills." Elias nodded, voice steady despite the cold biting at his bones. "And I'll make sure they remember, too." In that frozen hellscape, amidst the roar of battle and the creeping frost, Elias Kane rekindled not just hope, but the very spirit of resistance. The war was far from over, but the thaw had begun. The icy wind howled like a living beast, relentless and unforgiving. As Commander Elias Kane stumbled back behind a jagged outcrop of frozen rock, panting heavily, his vision swam with the biting cold, each breath a cloud of mist that vanished instantly into the storm's fury. "Damn it," he muttered, fingers numb but still clutching the plasma rifle tightly. "They're losing hope. I can feel it slipping away." Around him, the remnants of his once proud battalion huddled in frozen paralysis, their faces etched with fear and disbelief. The Leviathan's assault was more than physical. It was a siege of the mind, a creeping frost that numbed their will to fight. Soldiers who moments ago had fought with fierce determination now sat motionless, eyes glazed and bodies locked in crystalline prisons of ice. Elias' heart pounded painfully against his ribs, a tempest of dread and frustration swirling within him. The weight of command pressed down like the crushing cold itself. "If I can't hold them together, if I lose their trust," his voice cracked in the howling gale, "then this army is lost." Without a fight, the tension was palpable. Whispers of doubt spread through the ranks like wildfire. Some questioned his leadership openly. Others dared not speak, but wore the same hollow look of resignation. Even his most loyal officers exchanged worried glances. General Harlan's earlier warnings echoed in his mind. "Your strategy is reckless." But now, more than ever, Elias knew that without a bold move, defeat was certain. Through the crackling comms, faint voices trembled. "Commander Kane, morale is breaking down. Men are refusing orders. They want to surrender." The words stabbed at him like a shard of ice. Elias clenched his jaw, swallowing the bitter lump rising in his throat. "No surrender," he growled to himself. "Not while I breathe." Suddenly, a deafening roar tore through the storm, drowning out the wind. The Leviathan had moved. Elias barely had time to react when a swirling tempest of glacial shards burst forth. A devastating ice storm unleashed by the colossal beast. The air itself seemed to freeze solid, crystalline spears forming mid-flight, slicing through the ranks with merciless precision. Soldiers screamed as ice encased them, trapping limbs and twisting faces into frozen masks of terror and pain. Fall back," Elias shouted, his voice raw and urgent. But the chaos was overwhelming. He dove to the side as a massive shard exploded where he had just stood. Shards embedding themselves into the frozen ground, with a shatter that echoed like thunder. His plasma rifle sputtered, fingers fumbling as frostbitten nerves betrayed him. The cold bit deeper, creeping into his bones, threatening to steal his breath. A sudden, sharp pain exploded across his shoulder. A shard grazed him, drawing blood that steamed instantly in the frigid air. "Damn it," Elias hissed, pressing a gloved hand to the wound. From the corner of his eye, he saw Lieutenant Mara Voss emerge through the blizzard. Her armor battered, but her eyes blazing with fierce determination. "Elias, we can't hold them like this," she shouted, her voice cutting through the storm. "We have to try," he replied, voice hoarse but steely. "If we lose our minds to this frost, the Leviathan wins without a fight." Mara nodded grimly, firing precise bursts to create a path through the encroaching ice. "Then let's reach its heart. That's the only way to break its will." Elias' mind raced. He'd been wrestling with the idea of unconventional tactics. Fighting ice with fire wasn't enough. The Leviathan was a creature of pure frost, but every living being, no matter how alien, had a core, a weakness. If he could strike at that heart, perhaps they stood a chance. "Cover me," Elias ordered, his voice steady despite the gnawing doubt inside. "I'm going in." Mara's eyes widened, but she didn't hesitate. "You're crazy." Then a fleeting smile broke through her grim expression. "You're the Thawed of frozen wills. Lead the way." Elias sprinted forward, plasma rifle blazing. Heat flares cutting through the chilling storm. The air cracked and hissed as his shots hit the Leviathan's icy hide, fracturing glimmering scales and revealing faint fissures beneath. Cracks spiderwebbed across the monster's surface, signs they could exploit. But the cost was immediate and devastating. Behind him, another squad fell, frozen mid-shout, their bodies encased in glistening tombs. Elias' chest tightened painfully. Each casualty was a knife twisting in his soul. He pushed onward, fighting the rising tide of despair clawing at his mind. "Why am I the only one who believes?" he whispered fiercely. "Why can't I rally them all?" Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted as the Leviathan unleashed a concentrated blast of frost directly at him. Elias twisted, barely avoiding the icy spear that shattered against the rock beside him, sending shards raining down. Breath ragged, he stumbled but caught himself, refusing to fall. The crushing weight of responsibility bore down like an avalanche. Yet within that torment, a fire ignited, a fierce resolve hardened like tempered steel. "I will not lose them," Elias vowed, voice a growl against the howling wind. "Not today, not ever." He adjusted his tactics, abandoning the predictable frontal assault. Instead, he ordered Mara to create diversions, drawing the creature's attention while he circled to its flank. Aiming for those faint cracks in the armor, he experimented with incendiary grenades, intense heat pulses designed to melt the ice, probing for weaknesses. The battlefield became a chaotic dance of fire and ice. Elias darted through the storm, dodging icy blasts and shattering frozen soldiers trapped in the Leviathan's wake. His every step was measured, calculated, a desperate gamble to find the beast's core. But the enemy was cunning, adapting quickly. The Leviathan twisted, its massive tail swiping with bone-crushing force. A nearby explosion knocked Elias to the ground, shards of ice piercing his armor. Pain flared across his ribs, breath escaping in a sharp gasp. "Commander," Mara's voice cut through the storm. She was near, firing steady bursts to keep the beast distracted. Elias forced himself up, blood mingling with frost on his cheek. He wiped it away with shaking fingers, eyes burning with fierce determination. "We're close," he muttered. "I can feel it." Suddenly, a chilling stillness fell. The Leviathan paused, sensing the threat. Its immense eyes locked on Elias, glowing with icy fury. The battleground seemed to hold its breath. "Now," Elias whispered. He hurled an incendiary grenade into a fissure, the explosion sending plumes of steam into the frigid air. The creature roared in pain, staggering as its icy armor cracked further. For a fleeting moment, victory seemed within reach. But then the terrible price revealed itself. The squad covering Elias had taken heavy losses, frozen, shattered, or crushed under ice. Mara's voice trembled as she reported over the comms. "We've lost nearly half our force." "This isn't sustainable." Elia's heart clenched. Every fallen soldier was a blow to his soul. Every frozen comrade a reminder of his failure to protect them. He sank to one knee, breath ragged. "I'm sorry," he whispered to the frozen forms around him. "I won't let it be in vain." Mara approached, placing a steadying hand on his shoulder. "You're not alone, Elias. We're still here, and we still fight." He looked up, meeting her fierce gaze. In that moment, the crushing weight of self-doubt shifted, replaced by a steely resolve. "We'll find another way," he said firmly. "Not just fire against ice, but something deeper. The Leviathan's heart is more than flesh and frost. There's a will behind that cold shell. We break that, we break it all." Mara nodded, a spark of hope piercing the frozen gloom. "Then we prepare, we learn, we fight smarter." Elias rose, muscles aching but spirit unbroken. The battle was far from over, and the road ahead was steep and littered with sacrifice. But the thaw had begun. As the storm howled around them, Commander Elias Kane faced the bitter truth: to save his army, to save humanity's last hope on Nevarra, he would have to confront not only the Leviathan's icy wrath but the growing shadows of doubt within his own heart. The first clash was just the beginning, and the fight for the soul of his men, and the war itself, was about to reach a harrowing precipice. Commander Elias Kane staggered through the biting gale, his breath shallow and ragged. Each inhale a razor-edged shard slicing deeper into his lungs. His armor, once a gleaming testament to human ingenuity, was now crusted with frost. The intricate thermal regulators fighting a losing battle against the relentless cold. Behind him, the shattered remnants of his battalion lay frozen, motionless figures encased in crystalline prisons that reflected the ghostly blue light of the alien Leviathan's looming presence. The weight of their silence pressed on Elias' chest like the very ice threatening to claim him. He stumbled but forced himself upright, gaze locking on the horizon where the Leviathan's colossal form towered, its icy scales shimmering with an otherworldly luminescence. The creature's breath whipped toward him in a swirling tempest of frost, threatening to snuff out his very life. "No," Elias whispered, a fierce ember igniting in his chest. "I will not let the frost claim us all." His mind raced as visions of fallen comrades flashed before him: Lieutenant Voss's unwavering courage, Captain Riker's steady hand, the countless faces frozen in terror and sacrifice. Those memories fueled a stubborn resolve, a defiant roar from the depths of his soul. "They fought for this world," he muttered to himself, "and I will fight for them." But around him, the icy grip of despair tightened. His inner circle had grown fragmented, whispers of surrender seeping like poison through the ranks. Captain Riker approached, his face drawn, eyes shadowed with doubt. "Elias, we can't keep this up," he said quietly. "The men are breaking. Even Mara, she's barely holding on. We need to consider surrender before it's too late." Elias shook his head, voice low but unwavering. "Surrender is death. If we give up now, their sacrifice means nothing. I won't let that happen." His fingers clenched into fists, nails biting into frostbitten skin. "There is another way, a chance to turn the tide." His gaze hardened as he turned to the holographic map flickering in. The icy command tent, the Leviathan's heart, the source of its terrible power, lay buried deep beneath the frozen wasteland. Encased in layers of ice and alien energy, Elias knew the risk: to lead a small, elite strike team into that frozen heart. To attempt the impossible, to thaw the Leviathan's core and awaken whatever humanity or empathy might still lie beneath. The alien frost, "Who's with me?" he called out, voice cutting through the cold silence. Lieutenant Mara Voss stepped forward, her armor battered but her eyes blazing with fierce loyalty. "I'm in," she said, voice steady despite the exhaustion. "If anyone can reach the Leviathan's heart, it's you." Captain Riker nodded slowly, the fire of hope rekindling in his gaze. "Count me in, Commander. We'll follow you into the abyss." Elias allowed himself a brief, grim smile. "Then we move at once. Time is our enemy." The journey into the frozen wasteland was a nightmare made flesh. The wind screamed like a banshee, tearing at their suits, biting at their exposed skin. Every step was agony, muscles screaming against the cold's relentless assault. Yet Elias pressed forward, his mind locked on the mission, the heart of the Leviathan, the key to salvation. Ahead, the landscape was a treacherous expanse of jagged ice formations and deep crevasses, glowing faintly under the alien frost's eerie light. The air crackled with frozen energy, a palpable pulse emanating from the cavern beneath the ice where the Leviathans' heart lay hidden. As they neared the cavern's entrance, Elias paused, turning to his team. "This is where hope meets despair," he said quietly. "We either awaken what's frozen inside or perish trying." Mara's voice was a whisper against the storm. "We'll do more than survive. We'll make them remember what it means to be human." Elias nodded, heart pounding. With a final breath, he led the team into the cavern. Inside, the cavern pulsed with an eerie, frozen glow. Jagged walls of ice shimmered with veins of azure light, humming with alien energy. The air was thick with cold so intense it numbed thought and will alike. From the shadows emerged the Leviathan, its vast form coiled like a sleeping god, scales glittering like shards of starlight. Elias felt the weight of the moment crush him, the fate of his people, the ghosts of his comrades, the fragile hope for peace, all resting on this precipice. He stepped forward, plasma rifle lowered. "Leviathan," he called, voice echoing softly in the cavern. "I am Elias Kane. I come not to destroy but to understand. To awaken what lies beneath your frozen shell." The beast's icy eyes narrowed, a low rumble vibrating through the cavern. Then, against all expectation, a shimmering crack appeared along its chest, a fissure revealing a faint, pulsing light beneath the frost. Elias' heart hammered. He activated a device strapped to his wrist, a neural interface designed to bridge minds across species. With trembling hands, he extended it toward the Leviathan's chest, the interface emitting a soft azure glow that mingled with the alien light. "Please," Elias whispered, voice thick with emotion. "I see your pain, your fear. You are not just a monster trapped in ice, but a soul imprisoned beneath the frost." Images flooded his mind, visions of the Leviathan's ancient past, a creature once vibrant and alive. Bound by circumstances beyond understanding, Elias felt the isolation, the loneliness, the desperate longing for connection. Tears mingled with frost on his cheeks as he spoke again. "We are not so different. Let me help you thaw." Suddenly the cavern trembled, icy shards peeling away as warmth began to pulse from the Leviathan's core. The frozen armor cracked, revealing a being not of mindless rage, but of sorrow and resilience. Elias dropped to one knee, voice breaking. "You're free. You're not alone." The Leviathan's roar transformed from a sound of fury to a resonant, mournful song that echoed through the ice. The frozen wasteland outside began to shimmer and melt, the oppressive frost retreating like a vanquished nightmare. Behind Elias, Mara's voice rang out through the comms, breathless but joyous. "Commander, it's happening. The frost is breaking." Elias looked up to see his team emerging from the cavern, their faces alight with hope. The once frozen battalion began to stir, chains of ice cracking and falling away as the Leviathan's thaw spread outward. A smile broke across Elias' face, exhaustion and triumph mingling in his gaze. "We did it," he whispered. "We thawed more than the ice. We thawed hearts, and in that frozen world, beneath the glow of an alien sun, humanity's last hope was reborn, not through fire or force, but through courage, empathy, and the unyielding will to believe in something beyond the frozen dark." Commander Elias Kane's breath came in harsh, ragged gasps as he stood before the colossal Frost-Born Leviathan. The creature's icy scales shimmered ominously under the pale light, its breath a swirling tempest of frost that threatened to freeze the very air. For a long moment, Elias' gaze locked with the Leviathan's glowing sapphire eyes, not with hatred, but with something far more profound, understanding. "Enough," Elias muttered, lowering his plasma rifle. His voice was steady despite the biting cold that gnawed at his flesh. "There's no need for this to end in blood and ice." Behind him, the frozen army lay immobilized, their bodies encased in crystalline prisons of frost, their minds trapped in a chilling paralysis that had rendered them mere statues on the battlefield. The Leviathan's relentless assault had shattered their will, turning comrades into frozen relics. Yet now Elias saw a glimmer of something unexpected in the beast's gaze, a flicker of hesitation, a trace of recognition. Lieutenant Mara Voss stepped beside him, her own eyes blazing with fierce determination. "Commander, you're mad," she whispered, voice barely audible over the howling wind. "You can't reason with a monster born of ice and death." Elias' lips curved into a faint, grim smile. "Maybe. But I have to try, with slow, deliberate movements." Elias activated the neural interface strapped to his wrist, the same device that had bridged minds in the cavern beneath. The frozen wasteland. He extended it toward the Leviathan's chest, where a faint fissure glowed beneath the frost. The interface pulsed with azure light, weaving threads of connection between human and alien consciousness. The Leviathan's massive head inclined slightly, the roar transforming into a low rumble that resonated through the icy plains. Elias felt the surge of emotions flooding his mind, ancient sorrow, loneliness, fear, and an aching desire for release. The creature was not the mindless enemy he had been trained to destroy, but a sentient being shackled by its own frozen prison. "Look at what this war has done," Elias whispered, voice thick with emotion. "You and I were both trapped, you beneath your ice, I beneath theirs. But together maybe we can break free." Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the Leviathan's icy armor began to crack. Shards of frost peeled away, revealing the raw, pulsing core beneath, a heart not of cold but of life. Elias fell to one knee, tears mingling with frost on his cheeks. "You're not alone," he breathed. "Not anymore." Suddenly, a surge of warmth radiated outward from the Leviathan's core, a thawing wave that rippled across the frozen battlefield. The ice encasing the soldiers shattered with a resounding crack, their bodies stirring as frozen limbs regained feeling and frozen minds flickered back to life. A chorus of gasps, groans, and whispered names filled the air. The frozen army was awakening. Mara's voice crackled over the comms, breathless and hopeful. "Commander, the frost is breaking everywhere. The soldiers are moving, alive again." Elias rose, his heart pounding with a mixture of relief and awe. The Leviathan, once the embodiment of destruction, now led the charge, its mighty form guiding the thawed battalion forward. What had been an enemy was now an ally, a beacon of hope against the alien invaders. "Lead them," Elias commanded, his voice ringing with renewed purpose. "Show them the way." The Leviathan responded with a resonant, mournful song that echoed across the battlefield, rallying the thawed soldiers who surged forward in a relentless counterattack. The alien invaders, caught off guard by the sudden reversal, faltered under the combined might of humanity's revived forces and their newfound leader. Amidst the chaos of battle, Elias found himself surrounded by the faces of his comrades, once frozen statues, now warriors reborn. Captain Riker fought fiercely beside him, his steady hand guiding the newly revived soldiers. Lieutenant Mara Voss moved like a storm, her precise fire carving paths through the enemy lines. "Commander," Mara shouted over the din, eyes shining with unyielding spirit. "We're breaking their advance. The tide is turning," Elias nodded. A fierce smile, breaking through the exhaustion etched into his features. "This is what I fought for," he said, voice low but resolute. Not their destruction but their awakening, as the battle raged on. Elias' thoughts drifted to the cost of underestimation, the countless lives frozen by fear. The doubts cast upon his leadership, the scars borne by those who dared to hope. He realized now that the greatest weapon was not the plasma rifle or incendiary grenades, but empathy, the ability to see the enemy not as a faceless monster, but as a being capable of change. In the final moments of the battle, the alien invaders retreated, their advance shattered by the relentless fury of the thawed army and their Leviathan leader. The frozen plains of Nivara, once a graveyard of despair, now hummed with the vibrant pulse of life rekindled. Elias stood atop a ridge, overlooking the battlefield as the sun, alien and distant, cast its warm glow upon the melting ice. Mara approached, her armor battered but her spirit unbroken. "You did it, Elias," she said softly. "You thawed more than just frozen bodies. You thawed frozen hearts." He looked at her, a quiet gratitude shining in his eyes. "We did it together. This victory belongs to all of us." The Leviathan song echoed faintly behind them, a haunting melody of sorrow and hope intertwined. Elias knew this was only the beginning. The boundaries between enemy and ally had been redrawn, forged not through fear and destruction, but through understanding and unity. As the thaw spread, so did the promise of a future where species once at odds might stand side by side, not as enemies, locked in endless conflict, but as allies bound by empathy and shared purpose. Elias Kane, the Thawed of frozen wills, allowed himself a moment of peace amid the storm's aftermath. The frost had not claimed them. Instead, it had revealed the indomitable spirit that thrived beneath the cold. And in that spirit, humanity's last hope on Nivara was reborn.